Good evening and welcome to CYC News for the 28th of May 2017 and the 20th of Bashant 17:33am. I'm Anastasia Attia. In today's headlines, UK raises the threat level to critical. The UK halts sharing bombing intel with the US since the Manchester attack. Iran calls Trump's Saudi visit theatrical. Saudi Arabia and US companies reach $55 billion in deals. Cannabidiol slashes seizures in kids with rare epilepsy. And Manchester United and Manchester City donate £1.3 million as an emergency fund. To our top story, on Tuesday the UK raised its terrorism threat level to critical, the highest level for the first time in a decade. Prime Minister Theresa May warned that intelligence services believe an attack may be imminent. Hours earlier, police identified 22-year-old Salman al-Baidi as the suspected suicide attacker who detonated a bomb as throngs of teenagers poured out of an Ariana Grande concert in Manchester, killing 22 people and injuring 64 others. Al-Baidi is of Libyan descent, sources in Manchester's Libyan community told CNN. Prime Minister May said he was born and raised in the UK. Still on this story, Britain has suspended intelligence sharing on the Manchester bombing with the US after American officials leaked information to the media, an issue that British Prime Minister Theresa May will raise with US President Donald Trump. US officials released the suspected bomber's name and other details of the investigation into the deadly attack at the Manchester Arena on Monday night, urging British investigators scrambling to keep details of the probe confidential. May said she would raise leaks with Trump when the pair meet at an NATO summit in Brussels, Belgium. Arriving at the summit, she told reporters the special relationship with the US on intelligence sharing is based on trust. Prime Minister May said, "I will be making clear to President Trump today that intelligence that is shared between law and enforcement agencies must remain secure." Greater Manchester Mayor Andy Berman said that only intelligence relating to this particular probe had been suspended, adding that they can't afford to risk it anymore. Burham told CNN, "It has been compromised by the leaks and we can't afford any more, so we've taken a temporary decision to say let's clear it out and draw a line. Let's not have a row that lingers on. Nobody wants that, but equally we have to make our own opinions clear so we can get this relationship back to where we want it all to be." The US has faced growing criticism from UK lawmakers over the leaks, amid concern they could disrupt the fast-moving investigation into Monday night's attack against concertos at Manchester Arena. US sources were the first to reveal the identity of the bomber, 22-year-old Salman al-Baidi, leading to concern that police efforts to hunt down his associates could be impacted. On Wednesday, the New York Times posted photos that show what is said could be the detonator, a battery, nuts and screws for shrapnel and fragments of a backpack used in the attack. The paper, without specifying the source, said British authorities provided access to photos of materials found at the scene. Britain's National Police Chiefs Council warned that leaks of potential evidence undermine our investigations. Meanwhile, Greater Manchester Police Chief Constable Ian Hopkins said police family liaison officers had alerted families of the victims to the publication of leaked intelligence. "It is absolutely understandable that this has caused much distress for families that are already suffering terribly with their loss," he said. Former White House counter-terrorism chief Richard Clarke told CNN that he didn't blame the British one bit for turning off the flow of information. Newly re-elected Iranian President Hassan Rouhani dismissed US President Donald Trump's visit to Saudi Arabia over the weekend as a theatrical gathering that would do nothing to combat terrorism in the region. In a news conference in Tehran on Monday, Rouhani said Trump's first visit abroad was a theatrical gathering with no practical or political value. "You can't solve terrorism just by giving your people's money to a superpower," Rouhani said. He was referring to a $110 billion military deal Trump clinched with Saudi Arabia during the US president's first foreign trip since he took office, one of the biggest arms sales in history. Earlier on Monday, Iranian Foreign Ministry spokesman Bahram Kasami called on Washington to abandon its warmongering policy, intervention, Iranophobia and sales of dangerous and useless weapons to the main sponsors of terrorism, according to state-run Press TV. Kasami was reported as saying, "Unfortunately, under the hostile and aggressive policies of the American statesmen, we are witnessing a renewed strengthening of terrorist groups in the region and miscalculation of the dictatorships which support these groups." Using more measured tones, Rouhani said Tehran was waiting before passing any judgment on the new government in Washington. The 68-year-old leader also said the US had been wrong in its interventions in Afghanistan, Syria, and Yemen. "The Americans do not know our region, that's the problem. Those who are advising the Americans are unfortunately rulers who deviate America with unsound advice or by some influence in the US with their money," he said. In a further dig at Iran's biggest rival in the Middle East, Saudi Arabia, Rouhani reiterated the Iranian assertion that Saudi Arabia had been behind the September 11, 2001 terror attacks in the US, in which nearly 3,000 people died. He said people in the US would not be willing to exchange what they lost in the 9/11 terrorist attacks for certain sums and then forgive those acts. Saudi Arabia announced more than $55 billion in deals with US companies Saturday, coinciding with President Donald Trump's arrival for a 2-day visit. The Saudis announced they had reached preliminary agreements with US defense companies, industrial manufacturers, and oil and gas companies, following a Saudi-US CEO forum in Riyadh that will help Saudis make progress on their Vision 2030 plan to modernize and diversify the country's economy. The series of deals also includes a $12 billion investment in a US oil refinery from Motiva Enterprises, a subsidiary of Aramco, Saudi Arabia's natural oil and gas company. The deals are aimed at acquiring goodwill with Trump, who has focused on delivering a boost to companies in those three industries, giving him a multi-billion-dollar package to champion as he returns to the United States. The deals were paraded before Trump and Saudi Arabia's King Salman bin Abdulaziz Al Saud in a public ceremony at the royal court, with the American CEOs walking to the middle of a room to exchange leather-bound folios marking the agreements with various Saudi ministers. Sitting at one end of the ballroom beside Salman, Trump, who arrived in the room looking drained from the long flight to Saudi Arabia and series of meetings, began to smile and applaud as the exchanges took place. Separately, Trump also signed a nearly $110 billion defense deal with Saudi Arabia, which the two countries hailed as a sign of a stronger relationship between the two countries. Trump said that was a tremendous day, tremendous investments in the United States. Hundreds of billions of dollars of investments into the United States and jobs, jobs, jobs. The $55 billion in agreement include a $6 billion deal for Lockheed Martin to build 150 Black Hawk helicopters in Saudi Arabia, helping the kingdom develop its defense industry, which is a key component of the country's 2030 vision plan. US defense company Raytheon will also establish a branch in Saudi Arabia, and General Dynamics agreed to localize design, engineering, manufacturing, and support of armored combat vehicles. The deals represented a significant victory for the Saudi Deputy Crown Prince, Mohammed bin Salman, who has championed the Vision 2030 plan as necessary to modernizing the country and diversifying its economy. A monster of a landslide has buried a quarter-mile section of the scenic coastal highway in California's Big Sur region, piling fresh misery on a remote area that hasn't seen the road fully passable for months. More than 1 million tons of rock and dirt fell onto the Pacific Coast Highway, considered by some to be one of the most scenic drives in the United States. The section is 1 mile southeast of the small community of Gorda, about 60 miles south of Monterey. The landslide covered the road, also known as State Route 1, in a 35 to 40 feet deep layer of dirt for about 1,500 feet. The highway is the main artery running through Big Sur, a picturesque stretch that is a major tourist attraction. The highway already was closed at that spot almost continuously since January, and at a few other points along the dozens of miles of coast because of landslides caused by unusually heavy winter and spring rains. But the slide on Mud Creek was the largest by far, and authorities said they don't know when it can be cleared. Coltrane spokesman Jim Shivers said whether that roadway is even there anymore will be interesting to see once it's uncovered. No injuries or damage were reported, officials said. "You just heard a loud roar and we didn't know what it was until Caltrans came and told us the whole Mud Creek mountain came down," Rory Cosma, an inn manager, told CNN affiliate KEYT. Tedros Adhanom Ghebreyesus from Ethiopia will be the next Director General of the World Health Organization. He will be the first African to head up the UN agency after winning the most votes from 186 member states. He replaces Margaret Chan, who will step down from her 10-year post at the end of June. During her tenure, the World Health Organization's response to the Ebola epidemic in West Africa was criticized for being too slow. The agency was accused of missing key warning signs about the severity of the outbreak that began in December 2013 and ultimately killed more than 11,000 people. Addressing the World Health Assembly shortly before the vote, Dr. Tedros promised to respond to future emergencies rapidly and effectively. He also promised to stand up for the rights of the poor. He stated, "All roads should lead to universal health coverage. I will not rest until we have met this." In health news, cannabidiol, which is found in marijuana plants, reduced the number of convulsive seizures in children with a severe and often fatal epilepsy disorder, according to research published in New England Journal of Medicine. Among children taking cannabidiol, the decrease in the frequency of convulsive seizures, which involve a loss of consciousness, stiffened muscles, and jerking movements, was 23 percentage points greater than the decrease in seizures among children taking a placebo. The study was a randomized, double-blind, placebo-controlled human trial, which is considered the gold standard test for any new medicine. Cannabidiol, also called CBD, is one of more than 80 active cannabinoid chemicals in the marijuana plant, which is classified as a Schedule I controlled substance. Unlike tetrahydrocannabinol or THC, it does not produce a high. GW Pharmaceuticals, a company that is developing cannabidiol medicines, helped subsidize the study. After 3,800 years of cannabis used for epilepsy, we finally have solid evidence, said Dr. Oren Devensky, lead author of the study and director of NYU Langone's Comprehensive Epilepsy Center. His own previous research indicates that cannabis was used as early as 1800 BC in Sumeria to treat epilepsy. Neurologists of the Victorian period used Indian hemp, which is rich in cannabidiol, for the same purpose. Despite the generally positive results, most study participants reported side effects that included vomiting, fatigue, diarrhea, and some liver issues. Devensky concluded that CBD is an effective drug for this type of rare epilepsy, but was not a panacea or cure-all for these children. And finally, in sport, English soccer giants Manchester United and Manchester City have come together to donate £1 million to the emergency fund set up following Monday's terror attack in the city. It's now been confirmed that 22 people, including children, were killed in the bomb blast at an Ariana Grande concert, and a further 64 have been injured. The hashtag #ACityUnited was created to show solidarity between Manchester's two rival teams, boosting the We Love Manchester emergency fund by £2 million in the past 24 hours. The fund is designed to help victims and families affected by the attack. We have all been humbled by the strength and solidarity shown by the people of Manchester in the days since the attack, said Manchester City chairman Khaldoon Al-Mubarak. The hope of both our clubs is that our donation will go some small way to alleviate the daunting challenges faced by those directly affected, and that our acting together will serve as a symbol to the world of the unbreakable strength of the spirit of Manchester. Along with the help of local news organisation, the Manchester Evening News, the emergency fund total now stands at over £3 million. The barbarism of Monday's evening's attack has shocked everyone, said Manchester United Executive Chairman Ed Woodward. Our clubs are right at the heart of our local communities in Manchester, and it is the right that we present a unified response to this tragedy. And that's all for CYC News. A reminder that you can watch this news bulletin again throughout the week on YouTube. I am Anastasia Attia from the CYC studios in Sydney, Australia. Good night and God bless.